Couple things in the NFL and some stories to get to. I put up a poll on Twitter about this. The Cooper Flag Lottery, the Islanders Lottery for that matter, draft lottery for the NFL became a topic of conversation last week or so. And Mike Florio at Pro Football Talk posted the concerns and how the NFL has not really shown any inclination to have a draft lottery. And he went so far as to say installing a draft lottery is a league admitting that losing is good. And we actually see that too many of you have done this, so we're going to put a lottery in because losing is good. And we don't want you to tank, right? We don't want teams to tank, which makes sense to me. As someone who supports a tank because you're just using the rules that are there, if you want the rules changed, I don't have a big problem with that. I also don't think tanking is a very big problem, especially in the NFL. The NFL really doesn't have a tanking problem because you get games all the time where it's in a team's best interest to lose, and they win anyway. That happened to the Patriots against the Bills at the end of this last season. The Giants, right, they won a game against the Colts with Drew Lock that cost them, was that 2 years ago, cost them Drake May? You constantly have these teams that are at the bottom winning a game that they shouldn't. You don't have teams throwing games.
The Giants.
Yeah, the Giants, the Patriots are two I can think of. So Florio writes about this tanking idea. In 2014, the Bucs tanked in the second half of a game to ensure that the Saints would come back and beat them. You know, whatever. You've got reasons to do it that I don't have to lay out fully. But he writes this about the Bills. The 2024 finale introduced counter-tanking to the equation. All right?
Interesting.
Plenty believe that the Bills threw their Week 18 game against the Patriots to keep a division rival from landing the number 1 overall pick. Florio says that many think that the Bills went to New England and lost on purpose so New England would not get the first pick. A game in which the Bills started Mitch Trubisky in the game and then took him out and put Mike White in late in the third quarter. To which I would say, I've heard this as a wink, wink, nod, nod. Oh, yeah, it was good to lose that game for the Bills because it knocked the Patriots' draft pick down. Like, okay, sure. I don't dispute that. But the idea the Bills threw the game, I'm sorry, I'm not going to get there. Yeah. Trubisky was 15 of 21 for 101 yards. I mean, he averaged 5 yards a pass and threw 1 touchdown. They took him out for Mike White because it's the last game of the season. They're giving Mike White reps. Because, whatever, Mike White was not too good. 3 for 11 for 28 yards. Joe Milton had himself a nice day.
Got himself an opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah, to get traded. Got traded. Now he's with the Cowboys. Do people out there think the Bills intentionally lost that game around here? Does anybody actually think that?
It didn't cross my mind during the game, after the game, or until right now, until Mike Florio suggested that they reverse tanked.
Yeah, it wasn't a 6-10 team that decided to do this and rest their stars. And even if you had, the idea of protecting player from injury, the Bills in a non-playoff year sat Tyrod Taylor to avoid injury guarantees.
Yeah.
That's just a financial decision that you might not like it, but teams have done that in the past. Florio would legitimately make the case the Bills thought, we don't want New England to get the number 1 pick and lose on purpose.
That's the part I have a lot of...
Through the game.
Yeah,
not just we're okay with it, but plenty believe that Buffalo threw the game. You're telling me who ordered the code red? Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane? They're telling, hey, let's get Mike White in there. Let's make sure we don't come back in this game. I don't buy it.
I don't buy it for a second. I don't buy it for a second. And on top of that, like the idea that you're throwing a game against, isn't some of it you needing to care about the Patriots?
Well, I think you should care about that.
I think you should.
At the end of the season presser end of season draft presser, Bean was asked about how they build. And he said, first thing we do is look at the division. Right? The concept brought up was, if I'm remembering this exactly correctly, building to beat the Chiefs, to beat the Ravens. You want to be able to beat everybody, but are you putting your roster together with a team in mind that you have to get past? And he said, the first thing we do is look at the division. So whatever. I'm not disputing what you're saying here, Nate, that they would be overly concerned about New England picking first or fourth. But I'm not here for a single second thinking that the Bills went into that game thinking they would throw the game. This is a team, to make this point, this is a team that when A.J. McCarron won them a come-from-behind preseason game in Chicago, it was this massive celebration about how important it was. I think the Bills are a team that values their depth players. And guys go in that are further down on this roster that aren't Josh Allen or the handful of guys they would have pulled out of that game. They want those players to win that game. I mean, I've never, as much as I've sat in this chair and made the case for why tanking can, of course, be a smart decision for your GM and for your franchise, it's never about the players are in on it and going to do that. And here's Florio saying that the Bills threw the game.
Yeah.
And that plenty believe they would have thrown the game. To your point about the Patriots, and if you should worry about them, here's a fun stat for you on the Patriots. 2 weeks ago, maybe, I was in here with Joe, and I asked him if he could find 10 wins for them. And we went through their schedule, and he pretty easily found 10 wins. Would you believe the Patriots are favored in 11 of their 17 games this year?
Yeah, I think that's a crazy stat.
Favored already. The Bills are favored in all their games. The Patriots are favorites in 11 of 17 games this year.
Yeah. That's something.
That speaks to their strength of schedule. It speaks to, obviously, a little bit of belief in Mike Vrabel and Drake May and what they've done there. But if you just win the games that you're favored in, which we know that's not exactly how it works, like New England's in the playoffs, 11 wins. And, of course, 2 games against the Bills where they'd be underdogs. So 11 of the other 15 games, they are favorites.
Yeah, I'll say this about, I don't know, I keep thinking about this idea that the Bills, because what it would to me say is the Bills are worried about the Patriots getting the number 1 overall pick in this draft.
If they've
and they
thrown
need
that
to
game.
do whatever it takes to make sure. I have a tough time believing that. I have a really tough time believing that.
Well, it's even if you were worried about them, we're going to sit here and say now that teams that would not have, they would have too much integrity, and no snark here, they'd have too much integrity to tank for their own good, but they would not have so much to tank for
hurting someone else.
The non-good of their opponent.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. 3 draft spots for a divisional rival?
Yeah.
A tough sell.
It's a really tough sell. But so is Florio saying that other people agree that this happened?
Plenty believe it. That's all he said. Just, Plenty is just doing some work there. Plenty believe.
Yeah, all right.
Twitter poll, 28% voting do believe that, yes, the Bills would have thrown that game. 72% say no.
People, I don't know. Who would be telling him that he felt the conviction to write a piece about it?
Yeah.
Also, we're bored. We've gotten to that point in the offseason. We're now at that point in the offseason where week 18 games being thrown for divisional teams, losing 2 draft positions.
Being relitigated. Yeah.
We've gotten to that point of the offseason.
I mean, a point here is that the Patriots, of course, if they wanted to lose, could have played their backups, which
they could have easily.
Which they did.
They did.
They did do that.
They did.
They didn't play their starter.
Right. Drake May didn't play.
That's right. To protect him from injury. The same way that Josh Allen didn't play, to protect him from injury. So you have
a team that had nothing at stake. Both teams had nothing at stake.
Right. Which gets to the real root of does the NFL need a draft lottery? No. They probably don't. Could they put one in for television ratings? Sure. 40 million people would watch the top.
Right. They just don't need more television ratings. I feel like they're doing fine.
That might be right. But they definitely don't need a lottery. Here's New England. Just lose a game to the Bills, and you'll pick first. And the Patriots didn't.
Yeah.
Because their backups were trying, just like the same way the Bills' backups would have been trying. So it's just, man, is it ever work to say the Bills intentionally lost to a team that also would have been better off
trying to lose?
Yes. Right. Which is it? Get your story straight here. 803-0550. The Patriots, I do think the Patriots will finish second in the division this year.
I think there's a good chance they will too. Mostly because I think the Dolphins are headed for, and we talked about this, I think, a couple weeks ago. I think the Dolphins are headed for a full implosion. Ugly firings, trade-offs at the deadline. We still haven't gotten the Jalen Ramsey trade, which I think is, probably going to still happen. So they could fold. They could be a team in the race for a number 1 pick next year.
Yeah. Jordan Poyer, by the way, speaking of the Dolphins, like Poyer says he wants to come back.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I wouldn't anticipate that's going to happen, right? But don't think so.
No.
I mean, he can have the Micah Hyde contract. But
no, he's not.
Yeah.
He's not coming back.
One thing about the Dolphins, like you've been whatever, down on their build and what they are. We'll see how this version of them goes, but like, what's the plan? To be the fast, speedy team again, to run the precision offense again? That has worked. They've had a good offense and ultimately kind of hit their head on a ceiling like the Leafs.
Yeah.
If we could make a comparison to the Leafs, they get to a spot and then they just lose.